Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Hoff on the Mully and Haugh Show on 6-7 The Score. Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune at Halas Hall, covering the Bears' latest OTA, open access. Caleb Williams, again, we can evaluate, but let's start with it becoming a Hard Knocks life in Lake Forest. The Bears on the HBO special. Dan, big news on Thursday. How did the players react a day later?
Yeah, it's the players and Coach Matt Eberflus. I think that there is some open arms to this, David, that I think might surprise some people that understand the organization's historical resistance to the Hard Knocks programming. Matt Eberflus, of course, was part of the program in 2021 when the Indianapolis Colts were part of the in-season Hard Knocks episode. And he just talked about being very excited to showcase what the Bears think they have going on right now and feeling really good about the message that this team has right now to share with the football world and the interested audience, and just feeling proud of the opportunity to kind of broadcast that to a wider audience. Obviously, it will be I think a 5-week appearance on the show, and there'll be an opportunity for a lot of different things to be illuminated inside the walls here at Halas Hall. And I just thought that between Matt and Tremaine Edmonds today, you got a sense that there's some excitement to be the team in the spotlight and to embrace it the way they are.
6 episodes, I think HBO said, and it's obviously a continuation of a series that a lot of NFL fans have become used to and familiar with. Obviously, the Bears have had a reluctance to be involved because George McCaskey didn't want that kind of attention. I think things have changed. We'll get into that in a moment. But when you look at what it means to the football team itself, I feel like the back page of the Sun-Times on Friday said lights, camera, distraction. I understand why people may wonder about that, but I, for one, don't really think that's an issue. I wondered how players reacted to it. I wonder what Matt Eberflus said about the potential for distraction or an intrusion on the process. Guys are creatures of habit. But Dan, I think that's a little bit overstated.
Well, when I asked Matt, I said, having been through this before in Indy, are there things that you learned from that experience that you have to be mindful of as you take it on in a different realm here? Obviously, Chicago is different than Indianapolis, and there's a lot of different dynamics at play. But I think he's just understanding that, look, you're going to have to quickly get used to the extra presence. You're going to have to get used to cameras and boom mics and everything else being around a little more than you're used to. But at the same time, Matt noted that looked like the team is going to have the rights to edit things, to their liking or to exclude things that they don't deem worthy of being broadcast to a huge audience. And so that control factor, I think, provides a little bit of comfort. And then I think, the way I would say that the initial reaction has gone over here at Halas Hall is the Bears are very proud of where they are right now and where they are headed. And maybe the latter is more important, that they feel like they're starting a journey that is headed in a direction that they're cool with people coming along for that ride because they're truly confident about where it's taking them. And so it's going to be really cool, I guess, to have that chance, and then for us to kind of observe some more than we're used to observing. Even for those of us who are out here on the beat every day, we'll get some behind-the-scenes access to this team that ought to prove a little bit telling at times.
It's consistent with everything else going on. You draft the number 1 overall pick in Caleb Williams, and you announce and declare that it's a new day at Halas Hall, and history essentially doesn't matter about the quarterback position, and you're moving forward with a fresh start. So now you have an opportunity, and it is just that. It's an opportunity that over a 5-week period, you have a weekly 1-hour infomercial about all that is well at Halas Hall and all that is right about the Bears organization now and in the past. So you have a chance to celebrate that tradition, if you will. Not all of it's good, but you can look forward. And I think that's what they have to seize upon. This is a great opportunity. I don't think there's any negative to it.
Well, you say celebrate, but you also used a word in their infomercial where just abbreviate that and say sell, because what do you do on an infomercial? You sell yourself. And I think there is something to that because the Detroit Lions came across in a really positive light when they went through this experience very recently. And you had people around the league going, man, like that's not just talk that they have going on in Detroit about their culture and the things that they're about. And so now it's the Bears' opportunity to sell the football world and players who one day may become free agents about what it is that they're about here. The Caleb Williams experience here, David, is going to be a central part of what this show is about. And so it's going to be kind of interesting to kind of ride that roller coaster because we don't know during the time that the cameras from HBO are here how well Caleb Williams is going to be practicing, how poorly certain days are going to go. And that's going to be part of kind of the documentary, is just seeing how a rookie quarterback navigates training camp for the first time and navigates the struggles and the highs and the triumphs and the tribulations. And so that's going to be, I would imagine, very compelling content for the people that are putting this together.
The best part about the Hard Knocks series traditionally has been guys whose names we forget by September, but guys whose stories resonate for a very long time. There's going to be somebody with a hard luck story with adversity that he's overcome, who might play the guitar at team meetings and maybe call his wife or young kids on FaceTime in the dorm, or not the dorm, but the facility. And I think those are the kinds of things about Hard Knocks that you look forward to, getting to know somebody you've never met. It could be, we all know Tyson Bagent, but Travis and Tyson could be a recurring theme. You could see DJ Moore and his family. You hope that they get into George McCaskey and his penchant for umpiring and his quirkiness that we read about and from Courtney Cronin today on ESPN.com. There are all kinds of stories in every NFL city and locker room that now basically the American national viewing audience will have access to through Hard Knocks and HBO. Dan, you tell these stories well. I've done them before over the years, but there's something about images and the way that HBO does this that makes you feel a little bit excited to see what they're going to be able to put together.
Well, it should be fun. No, it really should. And now look, like for those of us in the media, we're going, okay, like how long do we have to, spend an entire Tuesday at training camp and then log back on at 9 o'clock to see what HBO's got going on and then write a story about that. We'll see where that heads. I think the world might get some glimpses into the room here and then the media room here at Halas Hall. Maybe a national audience will see how Mark Potash handles the back and forth, the guys at the podium asking questions, and they'll be fascinated by the ping pong match that is at times. It'll be kind of interesting to sit in our seats and kind of feel out what it's like to be kind of a bystander / supporting character for a story that's really compelling right now. Because again, the Bears are a compelling story in the NFL right now. You feel that every time you talk to people, both inside Chicago and elsewhere around the league. There are eyes that are fixated on the Bears and curious to see where this thing is headed. That's a good thing, because I know that there have been many a year that I have been on this beat where you're kind of trying to manufacture the interest in where the team is and where it's headed. And that is not the case in 2024.
Well, you've got the Hall of Fame game August 1st, which creates an earlier report to training camp. Now you've got the HBO cameras and Hard Knocks, which makes every Tuesday night for 6 straight Tuesdays appointment television and a potential storyline, as you point out. And then you've got the trip to London. So you've got three things really that coaches who are creatures of habit and want to establish a ritual and a rhythm to every preseason and season, things that they might resist or not like. How do you think the Bears will handle this? And do you think the Bears are dreading this?
Well, Brad Biggs calls those three things that you just named the triple crown of things that add to your stress and your workload as a reporter covering the team. I think the Bears will handle this just fine. I think that they've got things in place to help them navigate this. I think that they will try to put their best foot forward and show the world the things that they're proud of here. Again, you talked about some of the human interest stories that will be illuminated. And it'll be, just another thing here. I think that it is notable that Hall of Fame week comes 2 weeks into training camp. That is going to be a emotional week on a lot of different levels, with Steve McMichael and his fight with ALS, with Devin Hester, one of the most fan favorited players in Bears history, really, when you think about it. And obviously Julius Peppers to tack onto that. That trip to Canton is a compelling week all on its own. Rome Odunze grows up a Devin Hester fan, right? And wears 23 as a young football player, and he plays his first football game on the field at Tom Benson Stadium in Canton, Ohio, on the weekend that Devin Hester is going in the Hall of Fame. I mean, that episode's it's right there for you. It's
writes itself.
Yeah,
it writes itself.
Yeah,
it's good. It creates great drama and a backdrop for almost everything, and you can see that. And I wonder if it also, there is a monotony to preseason that sometimes sets in, even for the best intentioned of teams, and even for teams that have had as good of an offseason as the Bears have enjoyed. So I think there's also the element of that you look at and say, that's not going to be a problem this year. There will be no complacency at Halas Hall. There's always going to be something going on.
Yeah, and this year, I joke at home with my wife. I was like, you could literally work 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, and not run out of things with this team right now because there's so much going on and there's so much fascination around the various plot points that this team's got going on. HBO will take its swing at this, and we'll kind of all be around to track where it goes. And hopefully, again, like hopefully this is going where the Bears think it's going, which is toward a place of success, toward a place of contention, toward a place of championship pursuit that they've been striving to get to during the first couple of years of the Matty Eberflus Ryan Poles pairing, and now hopefully this is their chance to take it up a level.
Early prediction on breakout star of Hard Knocks.
Yeah, we were trying to talk about that during practice today. I mean, look, like Jalen Johnson's an easy one because you know the personality there that's out there. Tevin Jenkins, another guy who's usually pretty introspective and interesting to talk to when you're around him. You know, that's going to be fascinating to see kind of who they gravitate toward and who becomes that guy. I mean, I'm kind of scanning through my list here. I mean, Roma Dunze's personality certainly lends itself to the charisma that finds the camera, but there's probably going to be a sleeper somewhere in there that jumps out and you go, wow, that was really fun to go on the ride with that guy.
I bet you they hit the hometown angle hard with Cole Kmet, who's very camera friendly, who's very savvy, and he's telegenic. He's all those things, and I could see that it'll be HBO Hard Knocks presents the Chicago Bears and Cole Kmet.
And as
2024.
you emphasized, not a blue player the other day. You were very emphatic about saying that. So maybe he'll be able to have his retort for HBO and Hard Knocks.
That's going to follow me. Okay, one more thing about Hard Knocks before we move on to what happened at the OTAs on Friday. I wonder, Dan, if you think this is looking too far into it, but that is kind of what we do occasionally. George McCaskey historically has been opposed to the Bears on Hard Knocks. He's not made that an issue. I don't know the circumstances that created this reality. I don't know if the Bears had to agree or the league forced them to, or his role in it. But I do wonder, and I said this on the radio, and I do wonder it aloud. I feel like George McCaskey's fingerprints are as undetectable as they ever have been on this franchise. I think he stepped away from the stadium project and gave it to Kevin Warren to run. I think that this may be a continuation of that process where his presence, his strength, his power is not being felt. I don't know if that's a trend. I don't know if that's coincidence or design, but I do wonder what you think of that.
It's a good question. It probably deserves its own episode, to be honest with you, because there's probably so layered to talk about that. I think for years we've kind of talked about needing some structure and some leadership inside this organization that is married up with, the 2020s, 2024 as we stand here today, and understanding that tradition only goes so far in a world in pro football that's moving at warp speed to evolve and change and be about different things. And so I think being open to change is something that this organization has shown over the last couple of years, particularly, with Kevin Warren replacing Ted Phillips and all the changes that have come behind that, with Kevin at the top of the organization in the leadership role he's in. I think it's shown the organization's willingness to be adaptable. And this seems to be another example where whether they were forced into this or not, they're ready to take it on without being resistant to it, welcoming it and treating it as a fun opportunity and an enjoyable experience rather than an annoyance. And so, I guess that's my gut reaction to that question. And like I say, maybe one of the slow days of July, we can dive even deeper into it.
It's worth looking at again, I do believe, because of the way that it will maybe affect the stadium project and priorities and where the Bears pivot now that it looks like, life on the lakefront might be something that they might not be able to enjoy long term, but we'll continue to keep that in the back of our minds. Okay, so enough with Hard Knocks. Let's go from television and perception to reality on the field, OTAs. Sounds like Caleb Williams is back. Is Caleb Williams back?
I don't know that he ever left.
Okay.
He had a good Friday from what we were able to see. Now, look, like there's context to all these things. And so I'll just say this from a personal standpoint. I'm not one of these people that breathlessly tweets out statistical reviews of 7-on-7 periods during OTAs in May, because after you do that, you take a step back and you go, so what? What's the interpretation? What does it mean? What I saw with my eyes today was a quarterback who, in 7-on-7, showed some of the things that you want to see a quarterback at this level show, which is some of those anticipatory throws. I thought on multiple occasions there were balls to DJ Moore over the middle where you go, man, if that becomes part of the Bears passing attack on a regular basis, you're upgrading because you are able to see those things, make the throw, get it there as the receiver's coming out of his break and put it on him, and then DJ Moore is able to do his thing. So I loved some of that. There was a deep ball touchdown from Caleb Williams to DJ Moore. Also, a thing of beauty when you realize the arm talent that Caleb Williams has is about being able to throw fastballs to the flat, touch balls deep, layered throws in between defenders. There was another one. I'm looking at my notes here. It was to, let's see here. It was to Simba Webster along the sideline and is between two defensive backs. And it's just a perfectly thrown touch pass along the right sideline that finds the receiver right where he is and where the defenders can't make a play on it. So those are the things you love. Now, this is all, as Matt Eberflus said after practice today, he used the word wavy. A young player's development is going to be wavy. There's going to be days where the growth line is going up and there's going to be days where the growth line is going down. And you just have to get used to riding that. In the 11-11 period, I think there were times again where Caleb Williams is getting swallowed up by a rush and he's holding the ball a little bit too long. And then he's going to the scramble drill and trying to figure out what to do from there. All to be expected. But all in all, comparatively to a week ago Thursday, Friday's practice was much crisper, much more encouraging, and that's a good sign to see from Caleb Williams.
Did he look fluid? Did he look like he was throwing with authority? Did he look accurate? Are there things that that pass the eye test that immediately tell you that this is a different type of quarterback?
Well, so look, like the arm talent part of it is one that, over the month that he's been practicing here at Halas Hall now, it catches your eye. It's attention grabbing. It's one of those things where you go, yeah, that's a wow trait that he has, the ability to make these throws to different levels of the field with different velocities, with just the right amount of feel. It's truly impressive. Now, I tell you that there's context to this. So let me read you some of the starting defensive players who were not practicing today, not even in attendance. Montez Sweat, Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker, Kevin Byard. So all of a sudden, I just named you 4 of their 5 defensive backfield starters, and you go, okay, you should be able to pick apart a defense that's largely second unit guys playing back there. And so that's part of the context. So if you read that he was 13 of 15 and this and that, it's like, okay, yes, but the guys that are there to make his life difficult were off doing something else today, and so all of this, again, as we talked about last week, bigger sample size you want to see. You want to see the flashes. You want to see the things that you just talked about. And then you just want to measure consistency over the long haul. And that's something that will need a lot more practices observed to see. And again, next week, 3 of them in a row, mandatory mini camp here at Halas Hall. That should give us a lot more.
The other thing you measure tangibly during OTAs is attendance. And last week we made a big deal about who wasn't there. You just mentioned some defensive players who missed on Friday. How about the offense? What was attendance like, and what did Matt Eberflus have to say about it?
He didn't say much about it today, but it's one of those things where, okay, so here's some of the guys that, another defensive player that I didn't mention that was here today, but not practicing due to something physical, TJ Edwards. So now I've just named you 6 defensive starters that weren't in the mix for any of those things. Looking down my list, Nate Davis here, but not participating on the field. So is there something physical going on there? Not sure. Karan Amagaji, as we know, is out. Avion Collins out. Dante Pettis not around on the offensive side of the ball. DeMarcus Walker also not practicing today with what Matt said was an illness that lingered into the week. He was out on the field, but not here. That's not fantastic attendance. You can't puff your chest out and say, like, we are dominating the attendance game here at OTAs. Does it mean much? No. Next week, everyone will be here. We will see how it looks, but certainly on the surface there, I just named you a lot of contributors to the 2024 Bears that did nothing on the field today, and I'll add Tevin Jenkins to that list.
Attendance is one thing. The evaluation of obviously Caleb Williams is something everybody is doing. How about anyone else that stood out? Anyone else that drew the attention or comments from Matt Eberflus?
Well, look, so we saw Roma Dunze, right? Like, and we were
yeah.
promised that he was going to be back on the field today. He was indeed back on the field today. You see some of his route running ability. I've got something coming up in the next couple of weeks with his receivers coach from Washington that we will share on the podcast here. Some audio from him to go along with something I did for the Chicago Tribune. You just see some of the ability for him and Caleb to get on the same page. There was one play on a scramble drill where Caleb kind of saw him in his peripheral vision out of the backside of his vision and slung one over the middle, and Adunze made a diving catch. And it's one of those things you go, love to see that for 9 to 12 years going forward, right? Like just two guys on the same page on a play that's off script, making something work. So look, there didn't seem to be any sort of lingering effects from the hamstring strain that limited Rome this month. He seems to be back and ready to roll.
So just so people understand, OTAs are voluntary. Not everybody has to come. That's the nature of voluntary. Next week is a veteran mini camp, so the attendance is expected. And some players have contracts where they have to stipulate they have to be there, right? If they get bonuses or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
you would expect that next week attendance will be maybe a more pertinent question because the expectation is everyone will be there.
Friend of the Mully and Haugh show, DJ Moore, last week I thought was winning the award for being forthright and candid when he
Yeah.
was asked, why is it important for you to be here? And he said, there's 200 grand on the line. Obviously, there's a stipulation in his contract that says you have to meet a certain threshold of off-season practices to collect your off-season workout bonus. And that's a pretty good motivator for some guys to show up and be in attendance. It's not like that for every single player. It's everybody's individual choice. Next week, it would be shocking if anybody wasn't here. It's mandatory for a reason. There's huge fines if you don't show up to that. I would expect everyone to be here. And then the question becomes, who's actually practicing and what are they doing? I will say that Matt was emphatic today in saying that at this time of year, their approach is to be cautious with anybody who's feeling anything. If you've got any sort of soreness or tweak or strain or anything that feels a little bit off, the goal in May is to say, just you're good today. We'll get it taken care of, and we want to make sure that you're ready for the lead up to the regular season and certainly for week one. So that's another note to put out there that the Bears aren't going to push it in May just to have a little bit of better numbers at an OTA practice.
Anything else stand out to you besides the Caleb to Roma Dunze connection? Anything else stand out to you defensively about the guys who were there? Any undrafted rookies stand out? How did the 26 rated backup quarterback, according to SI.com, Tyson Bagent, fare?
Did throw an interception. I believe it was Jalen Jones that got him in a 2-minute period toward the end of practice on a deep ball down the left sideline. I joked on the sideline that had Nathan Peterman been here, the ball would have had a little bit more air under it and it would have all been good. So that's part of it for Tyson's day today. Matt Eberflus also shared that yesterday was their annual field trip. 2 years ago, Wrigley Field, last year, United Center. This week they went to Strawberry Creek to play golf and had a golf event out at Strawberry Creek. Cairo Santos ended up making a clutch putt to win something, although the description of it was not real clear on what exactly they won. I know they shared that clip on social media, and it was like, okay, Cairo made a big putt for some reason, but not sure what it was. To go along with that, Cairo Santos had a 52-yard field goal attempt today, David, that hit the left upright and then the crossbar.
Oh gosh. No,
I'm just sharing that it did happen.
No.
That's a factual journalistic report from out here at that OTA, and it is one of those things that sends shivers up your spine. You go, wait a second, like what did that mean?
Hey, speaking of kickers, Dave Tobe from the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously former Bears special teams coordinator, now doing the same job with the Chiefs for a very long time, made some news on Thursday talking about how he plans to perhaps consider keeping Harrison Butker, the commencement speaker of the year, off of kickoffs because how often kickers in the new rules are involved in tackles in the XFL. 35 to 40% of the time, they have Justin Reed, who's a safety, as their backup kicker, considering using him because kickers are involved in tackles so often. Any validity to that? Cairo Santos is 5'8", 175 pounds. Can't see him grabbing cloth and rolling his hips on too many runners.
There is validity to that. And this is something we had Richard Hightower, the special teams coordinator, for about 12 minutes after practice today. And a lot of that conversation centered around the new kickoff rules because this is fluid. And a lot of people around the league are excited about kind of getting creative and trying to figure out what works with these rules because it is kind of new and there's no book on it on how it should be done or how it can be done. And to go along with that, there's just kind of an evolution of what you're looking for out of both your kickoff return unit and your kickoff coverage team. And so that may change the way your roster is constructed. You may be looking at, 4 or 5 different players at the bottom of a roster now that fit strictly for playing on one of those kick units because there's the entire rule change is designed to put the kickoff back in the game at a much higher rate. And so if you've got a plan for that, it may change who makes the team and who doesn't. And so look, like I think as we get closer to preseason and we start to see this with our own eyes, we can have almost an entire episode talking about what this means for everybody, the returners, the coordinators, the people that devise game plans to do this stuff, and what doors are opened, as you mentioned with Dave Tobe, to getting super creative and trying to figure out things that work for your team that give you a little bit more, I guess, flexibility and allow you to do some different things. Look, I would guess that you wouldn't want your best kickers in the league getting hurt
No,
covering kicks. And so if you can
no.
find somebody else to do it, then go for it. And also keep in mind, Torrey Taylor's a big dude himself.
He's a big
And
dude.
and
He's
he's
a
got
strapping lad.
he's
Would he
got
be a guy can make a tackle?
absolutely, and he's got a versatile leg to be able to help you in that regard. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if during the preseason they experimented with that. And Richard Hightower also said, look, like, the preseason is a chance traditionally in NFL to just hide things, to not show what you're going to do. Well, this year you don't have that luxury because you need to see what works and what doesn't. And so he did emphasize that teams around the league are going to have to watch every rep of every preseason game to kind of just get a feel for what's happening, the cat and mouse game and everything that's going on league wide, to figure out what the trends are that work and what doesn't.
Can Jaquan Brisker kick?
Don't know that. Don't know that.
Who
That'd be a
is the
good
best
question for next week.
kicker among the secondary? Because that will be the guy that might get a good look.
I would think Kyler Gordon might have the opportunity, right? As a guy with the dancing background and the ability
Spider-Man.
and he's got that flexibility that might be able to help you. So maybe he gets in on the mix.
Okay, last thing before we get out of here. Obviously, the summer is arriving soon. June, right around the corner. The Illinois General Assembly adjourned without any resolution to funding for the Bear Stadium project on the lakefront. It will be next fall before it even gets on the table again. It's unlikely that by the end of the calendar year, anything will be approved, which means it's unlikely that in 2024, the Bears will break ground on a stadium project in Chicago. How does that shape their summer, Dan?
Yeah, and like let's definitely revisit this next week as well, because I know you've had some interesting content from your radio show to kind of inform some thoughts in the outside world about where the stadium project itself could be going. But I think, look, like if you are the Chicago Bears right now and you're Kevin Warren at the forefront of this project, you got to spend some time now revising your pitch and your proposal. The state government has spoken, and they've spoken loudly that this isn't at the top of their priority list, as much as it may be at the top of yours. And so you have to find ways to get ears to listen to you. You have to find ways to create momentum that is clearly stalled here in the last couple months. And so I don't know where that takes them. I don't know what direction that forces the next pivot, but it's clear that some form of adjustment and pivot is needed here, because that grand presentation that was held at Soldier Field on April 25th, I guess it was April 24th, the night before the draft, hasn't struck a chord in a way that's created direction.
I think we'll have to get back to this next week because there's a lot more to come. There's a lot of things I'd like to explore, which require a little more time. But for this week, that's enough, because we got the Bears on Hard Knocks. We got Caleb Williams making a triumphant return to respectability. And we have the Bears offense clicking on all cylinders after a successful OTA.
And a double doink. Don't forget the double doink today.
And a double doink by Cairo Santos, who better be practicing his tackles if any of the news reports are accurate. So we will wrap this up. We'll be back next week, because next week is the Bears veteran mandatory mini camp. So we will be all over that. For Adam Studzinski, our producer, Dan Wiederer at Halas Hall in a coat closet, I am David Haugh for the Mully and Haugh Show. Thank you for listening to the Take the North podcast on your free Odyssey app. Thank you for watching on 670 Scores YouTube page. We will talk to you next week.
Great talk. See you out there.